Good morning, class. Hey, today we're going to look at 8.6, solving rational equations. Again, this is the second part. I got a couple notes written up above here. If you'll notice this LCM, there's a formula there that it is the common factors times the uncommon factors. We will utilize that today. And then every answer that we've got, that we arrive at, we must always check, because we might end up with an extraneous solution. So, on this first one, 4 over x minus 2 equals x minus 1 over x minus 2. You might look at this and say, hey, I want to cross multiply. And you can do that. On these, where I've got a rational expression on the one side equal to a rational expression, you may do that. So, cross multiply, you would end up with 4 times x minus 2 equals x minus 1 times x minus 2. Now, I might be tempted to try to do a FOIL with this right side, but I think what I'm going to do, since I see I've got an x minus 2 on both sides, is divide it out. And if you divide out the x minus 2, excuse me for the cough, on both sides, you'll end up with 4 equals x minus 1. Add a 1 to both sides, and you end up with x equals 5, which should be my solution. Now, if I check up here, if I plug this up into the top, and I put my answer in there, x equals 5 does work, because my only restriction up there, based on those denominators, my only restriction was x can't equal 2. So x equals 5 is a fine solution. That would give me a 4 over 3, and on this side I would have a 4 over 3. So 4 over 3 does equal 4 over 3, and it checks. Therefore, we've got a good solution. My second problem, not the same kind of setup. I can't do a cross product here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that formula that had the LCM in it, or LCD, least common denominator. And I need to look at all of the factors in all three denominators. Okay? Factor in the first denominator is simply an n. Factor in the second denominator would be an n plus 1. It's a binomial, I can't break it up. But the third one, I can factor an n out of this, and I would have n times n plus 1. Well, remember my factors, my least common multiple is a product of the common and the uncommon factors. And if you'll see it right there, I've got an n in common, and I have an n plus 1 in common, and that takes care of all of them. So my LCM then is n times n plus 1. Now, if I multiplied each of these by n times n plus 1, each term times n plus 1 and n times n plus 1. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to cancel everything out that will cancel out. It will cancel every one of the denominators. Okay, all those highlighted in green, n over n, n plus 1 over n plus, cancels them all out. What I'm left with then is, let's go to a yellow here, I would have a 2 times n plus 1. Let's go ahead and write that, n plus 1, for the first term. In the second term, I'm left with n times n plus 2. So this would be plus n times n plus 2. Okay, equals, and in the third term, all I have is a negative 2. So I would distribute my 2's, so that'd give me 2n plus 2, plus, distribute the n's, and I'd have n squared plus 2n equals negative 2. If you'll notice on this side, I've got a n squared at the first term, plus 2n and 2n would give me 4n. And then I've got this 2 and a negative 2 over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my negative 2 by adding 2 to both sides. And that'll give me a 0 on this side. And on this side, I would have plus 4 equals 0. Now I've got the ability to use my zero product property. All I need to do is factor. So if I factor this, let me get the eyeglasses, split the ends, and then factors of negative or positive 4 that give me a sum also of positive 4. The only one that works is 2 and 2. So n plus 2 equals 0. Now I'm going to use my zero product property, which says if you set any product that's equal to 0, each of the factors then would be able to be set to 0. So if I took n plus 2 equal to 0, well, it's listed there twice. Since it's both the same, I don't have to list it twice. This would give me an n equals negative 2 as a solution. Okay? Now if you put negative 2 up here, none of the denominators would go to 0. And if you ran the check, n equals negative 2 is a good solution. We'll go down and do the third one here. And the third one, similar to the second one, is in a different setup. I can't cross multiply here. So again, we'll do our setup of the least common denominator. Well, let's look at in reverse order. On this one, we have a factor of x. On the second one, we have a factor of x plus 1. And on the third one, if I took out a factor of x, and I'd have an x plus 1 left over, look at my combination here. I have, again, an x in common and an x plus 1 in common. So, my least common denominator would be x for common and x plus 1 also for common, and that's all that's left. So there is my least common denominator. Having established that, then I'm going to go back in and multiply by x times x plus 1. Same thing we did on the last one. X times x plus 1 and x times x plus 1. Okay, the x's will cancel in this first term. The x plus 1's cancel. So I'm left with just, let's go to a different color. We'll go to orange here. Just that 3. So we'll write 3 down here for the first term. That's it. For the second one, the x plus 1's cancel, and I'm left with 3x. Okay, so if I write that, that's plus 3x. Don't forget this plus sign here. Okay, equals. Okay, and then on the last one, the x's cancel, and I'm going to be left with negative 1 times x plus 1. Do not lose track of that negative 1, x plus 1. Okay, if you distributed a negative 1, that's going to give you a negative x and a minus 1. Plus on this side, then I got 3 plus 3x. Okay, now let's move the x's to one side and the numbers to the other. So we'll add an x and add an x, get the numbers, x variables together. That's going to give me 4x. And then in the same stroke, I'm going to go ahead and subtract this 3. Subtract this 3, that gets rid of the 3's over here, equals, and on this side, that would give me a negative 4. Divide by 4, you've got x isolated now, and x equals negative 1. That should be my solution. But when I run my check, look at the dilemma. If you take that negative 1 up here and plug it in, negative 1 squared is 1, plus negative 1 would give me a 0. Oops, got a problem there. If you went into the second one, negative 1 plus 1, that gives me a 0. I can't divide by 0. Can't divide by 0. Therefore, this doesn't work. It's an extraneous solution. So since that was the only solution, and it's extraneous, there are no solutions. Now you could have one extraneous and still have a solid solution if there were two possible solutions, but it didn't come out in this one. Okay? So, hope that's helpful. Please refer back to 8.6a, the video, if you need to go back in and look at some others. They're going to be very similar to these. Your homework will be in Excel. Hope you're having a good week. Don't forget, 8.6b will be in Math Excel. And have any questions, give me a holler. See ya. Bye.